This is something that I think all my colleagues know that has been near and dear to my heart and I've worked on for a very long time. Sadly, I'm coming back to my colleagues to convey some bad news, and that is that on June 24th, I received a call from Alyssa Driscoll, who I recognize is here in the audience, in response to numerous calls and emails and text messages to President Parlow about this issue. And in the call, Ms. Driscoll conveyed that Chapman would not be negotiating or speaking with the city any further on this initiative. Needless to say, I was more than disappointed at hearing this news, and frankly, a little stunned that it didn't warrant being given the courtesy of a direct call from the president to explain just the reason why such a decision had been made. So I really think it's important that, to have this opportunity to just kind of go through a little bit of the factual context as to why this hits really viscerally, in a visceral way. A little over 3 years ago, our former police chief, Demetropoulos, met with Chapman's CFO, Mr. Hewitt, to explore the possibility of Chapman adding the cost of paramedic subscriptions, paramedic subscription program to each student's tuition bill. Chapman had just raised their annual tuition by 2%, or approximately $1,500, but adding an additional $68 to help pay and cover costs that their students would use, and as well as faculty and other employees, was apparently just inconceivable at the time, with Mr. Hewitt firmly telling Chief Demetropoulos, in what I think is kind of a rude way, that they would absolutely not entertain such a fee, and that was that. So armed with that knowledge and facing at that time the city's very first kind of understanding of our fiscal crisis and where we were at, and the council at that time was tasked with, we need to go out and find new partnerships, we need to be innovative, we need to find new revenue streams. I, along with Mr. Jeff Lawrence and Mr. Doug Redding, researched and identified the pilot program concept, which is used extensively on the East Coast. Every single Ivy League has one. Stanford has one. It is not an unknown quantity. It was something that we felt really strongly about. So about 2 years ago, with the council's blessing, we formed an informal ad hoc committee, studied programs at all the universities, looked at their endowments, what their enrollment is, what their fees and tuitions are, and all the money that other cities get from this type of program. We made a full presentation to the council. And then we were very public about it. We talked about it extensively, what the needs were, what the methodology was behind it, just a phenomenal amount of research. And I think that's important because for over 2 years, we talked about this. We met with Chapman reps. We discussed the concept in detail. It was part of our council discussions. It was part of our public forums. It was part of our discussions about fiscal responsibility. So for it to be dismissed out of hand is really bewildering. Furthermore, when the mayor created a new ad hoc committee at the beginning of this year, one that I wasn't a part of, I made my concerns known to the mayor that I was really concerned that the pilot program was being kind of pushed under the table and we were losing out on potential win-win for the university. So my understanding is that committee met last week, and it was made very clear to the members of the committee that not only were myself and the city treasurer asked not to attend, which was hard, but that also there were very strict parameters put on what could not be talked about in that meeting. And that included the pilot program, that included talking about some of the recent findings in the latest treasurer's report that just came out with the help of Chapman students, and that we weren't going to talk about the infamous undie run. So I am left to wonder, what kind of partnership is this? Or is it one at all? Because this is not how partners treat one another. And after the awful behavior we witnessed this year at this year's student run, how can you not want to address those things between partners, between public safety, and really look to be better and find a new way forward? I just find that baffling. So when we are about to embark on a campaign asking our residents and businesses to sacrifice, to step up, to approve a sales tax, how can we not press Chapman to the best of our ability to pay their fair share too? This spring, the university made a momentous announcement, and that was that they had reached a milestone in their endowment of $1 billion, billion with a B. And yet they cannot be trouble to come to the table and at least give us a reason, but like continue this conversation. And I will share, I think I've shared with most of my colleagues, that first meeting was hard. It was really hard when we sat down. Things got better. I thought we were on a much improved path, doing things the right way. So it's just really hard for me to think that I'm going to ask residents to sacrifice when the biggest thing that impacts my district and, brings both problems and treasure at the same time, because I have great relationships with Chapman students. I'm over there at least once a month talking to students. And there is so much more we can do. I know you, Councilmember Gillenhammer, have tried consistently to find new ways and new partnerships and be innovative. And we just seem to keep being rebuffed. And I'm, for one, kind of tired of being treated as such. So with that, it's important to know, again, $1 billion endowment, because all of that is taken off in terms of expansive amount of real estate that's off of our property tax rolls because of nonprofit status. So what I am doing tonight is not only sharing all this information with my colleagues and to the public, but also to seek from my colleagues an opportunity that we agree that we deserve a little better than this, and we should talk about it, and we should talk about it publicly. And I would like to ask if you would agree with me that we need to agendize in the weeks ahead so that we may explore our options with the city attorney's guidance and discuss what mechanisms can be instituted that will create a more equitable environment and a real partnership going forward where our residents aren't solely bearing the burden for services. With that, Mr. Mayor, I would ask my colleagues for their approval.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank you and the committee members for taking your time in working through these issues with Chapman. Obviously, there's a new chancellor there in Matt Parlow, and I know that he's anxious to work with the city to iron out perceived problems that may be there. The one thing I wanted to discuss, though, was I believe back when Daniel Strupa was still the chancellor, you did have an agreement in principle with him to provide funding for the city, but then that kind of fell apart. And I've heard various tales about that as to why that happened or how that happened. And I just want to be enlightened as to why that got sidetracked. And I don't know if that's anything you can enlighten us on.
I can do that. So, in full transparency, some of the missing pieces. Councilmember Barrios and I had many meetings with Daniele Strupa, the former head of Chapman, as well as their finance director, as well as Elisa Driscoll, who's here. And we made tremendous progress, and we were that close to having a pilot program in place. And then at the meeting on May 27th, which was our last official meeting, if you recall, Councilmember Barrios, you made additional requests to which Chapman did not react well to. And on June 2nd, I received this letter. So I will pass down to...
Mr. Mayor, if you're sharing a document, we will make sure that it is also publicly available for anyone who chooses to inspect it.
Sorry, I only have... Oh, I'm good. 4 that way. This, unfortunately, letter was written by Daniele Strupa. Dear Mayor Slater, I hope all is well with you, et cetera, et cetera. Looking forward to seeing you at the opening of the new research park. I'm writing to express my position after hearing from Brian, the Chapman's COO, and Alyssa Driscoll regarding the recent meeting they had with City Council. We entered this discussion to help the city in its fiscal crisis. However, I must share that the counter proposal from the city is a non-starter for us. The increase of the period from 3 to 5 years, we had agreed to 3 years. The increase of payment from $100 to $150. The request that we do not offer any more fireworks and that we eliminate the undie run are all requests we cannot accept. Therefore, at this point, Chapman declines to continue pursuing an agreement with the city. As you know, I'm retiring as president of Chapman in a few months, September 2nd. It's possible that my successor, Matt Parlow, may wish to reopen discussions, and so I recommend you and the City Council reach out to him in due time to discuss options. I immediately forwarded a copy of this letter to Councilmember Barrios. I immediately reached out to to Daniele Strupa, who was on vacation in Italy at the time. He contacted me immediately, and I convinced him to please come back to the table. We were so close, and he said, I will come back to the table if we can resume where we had left off before the last request came in from Councilmember Barrios. I said, that's fantastic, thank you so much. So we're just about to resume discussions. Councilmember Barrios let me know that there was no renegotiating. So quite frankly, that was the end of it. So the new administration, we waited for them to come in place then, and Matt Parlow made it very clear that he was not interested in discussing the pilot program. However, he was very interested in doing the liaison committee. So I took the best I could get, and that's where we are today. So quite frankly, Councilmember Barrios, the reason we do not have a pilot program lies squarely at your feet. And with that, it's your turn.
I am just absolutely floored, because anybody who knows me knows that I have a memory like a steel trap. And had I received this ever in the last year, we would have had conversations about it, but we didn't. And in fact, every time I saw you, you would tell me, oh, we've talked to him, and so we're going to get together, we're going to meet. This is from a year ago. This is insane. I mean, this is just beyond insane. In fact, I would challenge anybody who sat in the room on our second meeting to say that we didn't have a collegial meeting, that wasn't anything but professional and nice. But I want to draw your attention back, because you're forgetting some things where our first meeting with Mr. Strupa and with Mr. Hewitt was terms dictated by them in an agreement written by them that also included two quid pro quos that are illegal and we could not enter into, and we had to talk to them about that. We had to talk to them at length that those things were unacceptable. And not only that, it was an agreement that was, it just wasn't even the type of agreement that you would bring forward and that you would, with all seriousness, ask any municipal agency to enter into. So when we had that second meeting following up at that point with Ms. Driscoll and I'm sorry, I don't know Brian's last name, but I just remember that meeting as nothing but collegial and nice. Yes, I wrote up new terms because they had brought us an agreement. They didn't even bring us a term sheet. And at that conversation was, here are terms. Clear, professional. Now we have a starting off point to discuss and to be professional. And as someone who has sat in many, many negotiations, that's exactly what you're supposed to do as a starting point. Yes, because it was new, there were some of these other items in there, but I distinctly said in that meeting, you can't blame me for trying. I'm putting these in here because there are things we need to discuss. If those aren't acceptable and we need to take them out, that's fine. And we have sat on this dais and talked about it before, where some of my colleagues wanted to charge them $250. And we had not agreed on 3 years versus 5 years. You're remembering what they dictated to us in the very first meeting without us even bringing terms to the table. That was the very first meeting. And the fact that they even suggested in that meeting to do something that we could not do, which was, we'll give you this if you give us, our specific plan, which was a huge no-no. And then on top of that, they argued with us about what our legal department had said about the Panther Village, which was, we're just paying that out of the goodness of our heart, which our legal team, thank God, immediately, and Tom Casella at the time jumped right in and said, that's not true. That is not true. Look at this agreement. This is what the agreement is. And if you want to lay all this on my shoulders and, nicely done that somehow I'm the villain here, what I say is I am tired of being treated. And I think the residents are tired of being treated. And I think the city as a whole should be tired of being treated as a second-class citizen in our own town. Beyond that, we have said this over and over. Are we a town with a college or are we a college town? And I want to be a town with a college. They advertise and market, come to Orange. That is why we are a great university, because we are in a safe place. That safety happens because of our cops. Come to Orange because the crime is low. That low crime rate is because of our cops. Your safety is there and guaranteed because of our fire, and everybody pays for it. So to not fight for this or to act like this is my fault is insane, number one. And number two, it is just a lie. I have never seen this letter before, ever. I'll go back, look at every single thing that I've ever been given and see if that's in there. But I'm just absolutely flabbergasted. But thank you.
Everything I said can be documented, and if you check your texts from a year ago in June, you'll see a copy of this letter that I sent you a copy of. So.
Good evening, council and team and first responders and everyone that's here tonight. The pilot program is something that's near and dear to me and a few other people in the community. We spent a lot of time researching without emotion the feasibility and the mechanics of a pilot program and what it would do for the city and why. And I know that some meetings have gone astray here, and I think that in negotiations you try to get, it's kind of like a Senate bill. You end up sliding all these things in at the end, and then the whole thing gets thrown out. And it sounds like that's what's happened here. But I'm asking this council or this ad hoc committee to get back to the basics of why we need a pilot program. We want a pilot program, which is completely discretionary, not mandated by any type of law with Chapman University. It's because the host city is primarily responsible for that great institution and their growth. And the amount of properties that they have purchased to sustain their growth, most of them, especially the larger ones, are tax exempt. And that's property taxes that don't go to the city. And the number one revenue source for all cities and the state for the past few years has moved away from retail sales tax to property tax. So we're feeling that squeeze. We've been feeling the squeeze since COVID, and we've been feeling the squeeze with Chapman's expansion. And so that's what this does is, as Arianna says, it helps them to pay what would be their fair share. We have plenty of other example cities with Stanford, with Boston University. You can go on and on and on. The data is out there to support a pilot. If we get into the emotional side of things with the undie run and all of that, in my opinion, it takes away from the real reason, which is an established reason. The pilot program stands on its own. You don't need to add other things into it, in my opinion. It's solid enough to make a good, wholesome request from Chapman University, and then let them decide what they want to do. That's all I have to say about it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Doug.